gradually clear its way southwards, so turning drier across southern parts of England with some occasional sunny spells, but frequent showers across eastern areas. Some of these are still wintry, and for all of us, temperatures are falling closer to average at around 6 to 10 degrees. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A9 is partly blocked northbound by a fallen tree after the A924 at Pit Lockery. Buses replaced trains between Stranraer and Ayr because of a signalling problem. On the M62 in East Yorkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 37 and 38 from Howden to North Cave. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, there are anti-clockwise queues after traffic was stopped because of an accident between junctions 13 and 12 from Worsley to the Eccles interchange. Queues back to junction 19 at Haywood, with delays too on the southbound M61 from junction 4 at Farnworth. The M69 in Leicestershire is closed each way between junction 1, the A5 Hingley and Nuneaton turn, and the M1 for an investigation with long delays on approaches to there. And the M271 in Hampshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junction 1 near Southampton and the M27 causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, Monday the 10th of March, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, reform, apparently, on the rocks. Rupert Lowe claims he was targeted for criticising Nigel Farage's leadership. In an article written by our very own Andrew Pearce, Ben Habib joins us next.
The serious answer is to smash the gangs.
We have to take those gangs down. To smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
To smash these gangs.
So much for smashing the gangs. More than 4,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel this year, including a Hamas supporter who's publicly called for the slaughter of all Jews.
And there's a pilot shortage. The RAF doesn't have enough pilots to deploy jets to Ukraine because of their diversity drive. We'll be digging into that.
How much do you think it costs to keep foreign prisoners in our jails? Try £1.3 million a day, every day, while those waiting for deportation, we're told, could be made to wear electronic tags.
And Trump has been causing more controversy. He said that Ukraine may not survive, but the president is hopeful for progress from meetings this week.
Ukraine may not survive, Well, it may not survive anyway, but, you know, we have some weaknesses with Russia. You know, it takes two.
All change in Canada. Remember him, the former governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney? He was hopeless, by the way. He's going to be the new Prime Minister. And overnight, he claimed Donald Trump wants to destroy their way of life.
Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form.
One of my particular favourites. It is Upside Down by Diana Ross.
And the King takes to the airwaves to mark Commonwealth Day. He's pledged to restore what he's calling the disrupted harmony of our entire planet. It's a big job.
Well, I'm outside Westminster Abbey, where the King and Queen will arrive later today for the Commonwealth Day ceremony. 56 Commonwealth nations. The theme is Together We Thrive, but the King warns of uncertain times.
And we know a lot of you out there are interested in the story of the Reform political party. Well, we're going to be tackling it head on this morning. You've got a lot to answer for, Andrew Pearce.
Not me. I just interviewed an MP who happened to say, Rupert Lowe, very popular with Reform grassroots supporters, that he had reservations about the leadership style of Nigel Farage. Cue an explosion.
He called him messianic.
He did.
And it's caused all sorts of disruptions within the party. Are they bigger than this? Do you think they can ride out this and it's really just a small storm? GBNews.com/your say. It's going to be a heck of a show. First, though, here is the news with Sam Francis.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much indeed, and good morning to you. We start with news regarding migrants crossing the English Channel today for a record-breaking 10th day in a row. Small boats have arrived in UK waters with another 150 migrants making that journey today alone. It takes the total since the 1st of March to more than 2,200. And another boat still in the Channel has now made it to British waters this morning. Meanwhile, the Tories are pushing to raise the minimum salary for migrants to £38,700 and tighten rules on family visas under new border proposals. MPs are also set to debate a petition calling for a 5-year suspension of all immigration after it gained over 200,000 signatures. US pressure on Ukraine to accept a ceasefire with Russia is intensifying today as top officials head to Saudi Arabia for talks. Trump has halted military aid and intelligence sharing after a public clash with Zelensky at the White House over ending the war. Ukraine is, meanwhile, offering access to rare earth minerals in exchange for security guarantees, but Trump has made no commitments. Meanwhile, Russian drone strikes have killed at least 25 people in eastern Ukraine, as Kyiv's military claims to have shot down 130 drones overnight. Back here at home, Reform UK's lawyer investigating allegations against MP Rupert Lowe has denied making comments he attributed to her. Lowe, suspended from the party and now an independent MP, is accused of making threats against Reform's chairman and faces bullying claims, both under investigation. He insists, though, there is no credible evidence against him, calling it a political assassination for challenging Nigel Farage. The lawyer, a King's Counsel, says she never expressed dismay or shock and is correcting the record. Lowe is now considering legal action, accusing Reform of lying about his cooperation. And the King will lead the nation in celebrating the Commonwealth at today's annual service at Westminster Abbey later today, joined by the Queen, Prince and Princess of Wales and, of course, a 2,000-strong congregation. In a message, King Charles has called for restoring the disrupted harmony of the entire planet. They're calling it the most important challenge facing humanity. He's also paid tribute to the sacrifice and selflessness of Commonwealth forces ahead of events marking 80 years since the end of World War II. The Prince of Wales, absent, of course, last year while undergoing her cancer treatment, will return alongside the King, who postponed public duties after his own diagnosis. That's the news from the GB Newsroom for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at the top of the hour. Now, though, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev until midday. Now, if you are a Reform supporter, it was a busy weekend. Even if you're not a Reform supporter, it was a busy weekend if you're interested in what's going on with that party. Andrew Pearce, on Friday, there was an article in the Daily... Was it Thursday? Oh, yeah, because we were on the telly, so it was Thursday. Yeah. On Thursday, there was an article in the Daily Mail, which was an interview that you did with Rupert Lowe.
Yeah.
We can show you up on screen.
Just to remind people, he is the great Yarmouth MP, one of the 5 MPs, successful businessman in his own right, worth about 30 million, employs 350 people. What he said in that article, he said lots of things. I mean, he had some really hardline things to say about migration. Deport every single illegal migrant. Who's not cheering that? But it's what he said about Nigel Farage. Messianic. And does he have will those qualities turn into sage qualities of leadership? Jury's out. And is he a proper... And he also says the Reform is more of a protest party than a proper political party.
And in the article, it says that he declared he wasn't sure that Farage could deliver the goods and become Prime Minister.
Well, I think he thinks he could be Prime Minister, but can he deliver the goods? It's a different question altogether.
But for Nigel Farage waking up on Friday morning for the party... Thursday morning, sorry. This was problematic for them.
Oh.
They are still maintaining that this article has had nothing to do with the fact that Rupert Lowe has had the whip suspended.
The very next day?
The very next day. They appointed the KC on the Friday to deal with this inquiry.
So just in context, there were allegations made of Rupert Lowe bullying 2 female members of his parliamentary staff. That would normally be investigated by the parliamentary authorities, and they're pretty thorough. However, Reform decided at the end of February to bring in a KC to investigate it, and they decided to tell the world about that the day after my article appeared.
And the allegations were not specifically against Rupert Lowe. I think that's really important to say. They are against 2 offices that he runs. People in 2 offices. Now, these are complaints from 2 women in 2 separate offices, one of them in Great Yarmouth, one of them in London. What else could Reform do? They have to take complaints seriously. It is 2025. If they hadn't taken those complaints seriously... And those women came out 6 months later and said, I complained to Nigel Farage and the party that there was a bullying culture in our office and you did nothing about it, then the Reform Party will be criticised for not being professional and being possibly misogynistic.
I get that, but also have to understand here, these people are not employed by Reform, they're employed by Parliament, they're paid for by the taxpayer, so there is, immediately there's a complaint of this nature, Parliament's own investigations kick in. So there is a separate... proper parliamentary inquiry. And before people say, oh, that'll be a fudge, the parliamentary ombudsman who investigates is pretty draconian. But I think the real issue for Rupert Lowe, what can cause him most concern, was the revelation that the chairman of Reform, Zia Youssef, we learnt that same day, has called in the police over allegations that Rupert Lowe threatened him with violence twice. Now, in all the years I've been doing politics, I can't remember a party chairman telling the world, I've called in the police because an MP threatened me with violence. I just never heard of it.
But doesn't that suggest that they think there must be a significant problem? If they've suspended the whip and they've called the police...
And Rupert Lowe has vehemently denied it, and today he's consulting his lawyers about defamation.
Richard Tice, of course, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, was talking to Camilla Tominey on GB News yesterday. This is what Richard said.
There's only 5 of you, and you're fighting like rats in a sack. How on earth is Nigel Farage going to command hundreds of MPs, which is your aspiration for the next general election, if he can't keep 4 MPs in check?
Because the truth is, we're working incredibly hard. We're going to work the hardest over the next 4 years. We're going to have the best candidates and the best policies.
You're working hard.
Hang on. And that starts on May the 1st this year. Then it goes into the devolved nation elections next year, and we're going to prove it by results.
Let's get the latest from the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib now. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ben. Are you delighting in this controversy that's currently surrounding the Reform Party?
No, not at all. I think it's tragic what's happening to Reform. Remember, it was people like me that helped put Reform on the map. It's people like me and Rupert who fear that the country is facing existential threats at multiple levels, which is why we're in politics. We're desperate that reform should deliver for the country, that reform can restore the United Kingdom to its former glory, to put up our borders, become a sovereign, independent, prosperous country again. We're absolutely desperate for it. So this is hugely tragic. And you might remember, Bev, I was on Dukes with you. You were hosting because Michelle wasn't on. And I was talking about the importance, just a couple of weeks ago, the importance of getting the structure of Reform UK right. And I've been banging on about that because I want the party to succeed, because I don't believe that even if they gain power, they'll be able to deliver what's required to save the United Kingdom unless the party has the proper structure to be able to take in and hold the greatest minds on our side of the movement so that policies can be established, articulated to the British public, and then delivered, enacted. And reform's got to go, as Andrew wrote in his article, or when he quoted Rupert. Reform's got to go from being an insurgent party, I think Rupert called it a protest party. It's got to go from being on the sidelines to being in the centre of policy making. It's got to be at the centre of government, hopefully. You can't do that on the back of one man. And fundamentally, this dispute, I think, boils down to exactly the same thing about which I've been complaining, that the party isn't properly structured and there's no mechanism by which someone like Rupert can even make complaints heard by the leadership. If the party is controlled and dominated by one man, all you can do is plead to him. There's no mechanism by which you can be genuinely heard. And this would never have happened if reform had been properly democratized and the right checks and balances put in place. Rupert would have been heard and the issue would have been resolved.
But Ben, if you say that the ideology of the party is so important to you, why are you being such a public thorn in the side of Nigel Farage and Reform? Because this does not help them. And without the Reform Party, without Nigel Farage, what is the Reform Party? He is that talismanic figure that nobody can currently replace.
I wholly disagree with you. I wholly disagree with the notion that individuals are indispensable. And I disagree also with the notion that Nigel has put about, that this party owes its 5 MPs to him. On the eve of the general election being called, Reform UK was polling 16%. And let me just remind viewers, Nigel had been nowhere to be seen on the political battlefield for 4 years. On the 23rd of May 2024. He left politics after we supposedly left the EU in 2020. We were polling 16% without any support from Nigel Farage, and we got 14% of the vote in the general election, bang in line with our polling. Can I just finish, Bev? We got 5 MPs, and having got 5 MPs, which, by the way, from a political historical perspective, was transformational and seismic, the polling of the party would have automatically gone on going up. Reform was Reform was in a pivotal position, and it was bound to do well, and it was bound to continue to do well. That's why it went from being. That's why it became so important that the structure of the party got right.
But they have addressed that. Would they have addressed that in terms of the structure of the party?
They haven't. They've told you they've addressed it, but it's in control of Nigel. They've misled the public. And I'm happy to have a debate with Nigel and or Zia Yusuf on the subject. The party is still controlled by Nigel. He is in an unassailable position. It's absolute misrepresentation of the fact when they say that they've democratised the party.
Ben, can I just jump in here? And what you're referring to is that the company used to be owned by Nigel Farage, who was the major shareholder. That was all swept away, but a new company has been set up at Companies House called Reform 2025 with two directors, Nigel Farage and Zia Yusuf. So people like you and Rupert Lowe are saying, how is that democratising? But can I just read you a text you sent to Rupert Lowe at the end of February, which seems incredibly prescient. The drumbeat of a rift between you and Reform is getting louder. Don't let them throw you out and control the narrative. They'll find some cock and bull story to justify their decision, and any defence you offer will be dismissed as being wrong, bitter and twisted. Does what happened the day after that article appeared, Ben, confirm your fear that they were determined to kick Rupert Lowe out of the party, come what may?
Absolutely. I'm so glad I wrote that text to Rupert, because I could see the direction of travel. It was a direction of travel that I've seen unfold for many, many good people in the grassroots of reform who don't get a mention because no one knows them. But Zia Yusuf has systematically been going across the country, displacing people, and in the process, rubbishing their reputations. And
now, he's not here to defend himself on that, Ben, just to say he's not here to defend himself on that.
But I could see the same thing happening to Rupert. And so I woke up on that Friday morning, and I texted Rupert, and I said, Rupert, just be aware that I think this is where it's going. They're going to rubbish your character. They're going to sack you, rubbish your character, and then any defense you put up will be portrayed as bitter and twisted and irrelevant. And so get ahead of the game and resign. And exactly what I predicted happened. They have attempted actually not just to rubbish Rupert. Let's just get this into perspective. They haven't just attempted to rubbish Rupert. They've attempted to destroy him. When you make an application to the police, when you make a complaint to the police about physical threats of violence, you're actually putting this into a domain where Rupert could be, however frivolous the claim, and it's an entirely frivolous claim, otherwise it would have been made back in December. However frivolous the claim, you are putting a man's personal liberty in danger. They have tried to destroy Rupert, and
listen,
that for me
Ben,
is abominable. That is abominable.
Rupert Lowe is a popular MP. He's very popular with his constituents, not least because he gives his monthly salary to local charities. He is excellent on social media. He puts a lot of tweets out which resonate and they land about farming, about immigration. Is it just... How is it possible that Nigel Farage would want to get rid of such an MP when he is popular? It makes no sense. Nigel might be many things, but he's smart as a politician. He wouldn't want to get rid of a man like that unless he felt there was a legitimate reason to suspend the whip. We don't know what the allegations of bullying are. Have you seen the allegations of bullying, Ben?
Well, but as you said, there are no allegations of bullying against Rupert. These are allegations made against other people, but apparently the bullying took place in Rupert's office. Rupert is not being accused of bullying.
No,
and again,
not.
the statement put out by Reform was so vague that anyone reading it without inquiring would think Rupert is the bully. He's not the bully. He's not even in the crosshairs of blame here. And yet it opens with an allegation of bullying against two women. And then it goes on to make this ridiculous complaint that he threatened Zia Yusuf with physical violence. Absolute absurdity. But let me just answer your first question, Beth. At the heart of all of this, at the heart of Nigel's refusal to restructure the party, democratize it, at the heart of his refusal to bring on good people is his narcissistic nature. And I'm sorry that I have to make it personal, but if people are to understand what the problem is, it's to do with Nigel's narcissism. For all his ability to campaign, bang the drum, and deliver results in the polls, actually he can't bear anyone to be as popular or more popular than him. And just one more thing. When Elon Musk endorsed Rupert Lowe, that put a target on Rupert Lowe's back. That was the beginning of the end of Rupert being in the party.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Obviously, Nigel isn't here to defend himself. He would say that he isn't a narcissist.
Of course
We're going to carry on this conversation in just a minute. Here's your weather.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, it's actually rather unsettled across much of Europe with heavy rain and thunderstorm. This is all to do with an area of low pressure, so bringing spells of rain and some heavy and frequent downpours across much of Spain and into Italy. The best of the sunshine will be towards the far, far east across parts of Greece. Temperatures here not doing too bad at around 18 or 19 degrees. And we hold on to some heavy showers through the week as well. Temperatures up to 20 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Last week, Christie's Auction House in New York announced that it was holding an auction devoted solely to art created with artificial intelligence. Nearly 6,000 people have signed an open letter calling on Christie's to cancel the sale over concerns that the technology behind such AI art pieces exploits human artists and can potentially violate their copyright. And there are broader ethical questions at play too. Where do the boundaries of art lie? With me now is James Thomas from Martin Stanmore Auctions. James, very good to see you indeed. I don't quite see how you can have art without a human being. I mean, art to me is something which is produced by a human being which expresses something about the human condition. To me, that cannot be produced by a machine. How do you react to that?
I agree completely with what you're saying there. I think for us at Martin Stanmore, we're very much about sort of getting behind artists in a traditional method.
I sometimes say to my team, you know, I've got a piece to camera to do now. Find out what AI would say that I would say. And, of course, what it comes up with. It doesn't have enough knowledge about what I've just experienced, so it's not a perfect example. But it certainly gets the tone. And, therefore, I mean, I'm completely replaceable. I mean, you know, the next series that I do... Say that. Well, thank you so much. But the next series I do of Railway Judges, you could perfectly well have an avatar and AI producing words that sound like mine.
It is very scary. It is very scary. And I think for collectors and investors, it's a bit scary for them too. I mean, a lot of our collectors at Martin Stanmore that we speak to, they very much prefer things that come from traditional artists, not just sort of blue chip works, but also up and coming artists.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We are talking about this issue that the Reform Party have got at the moment. Would most people know Rupert Lowe if he walked down the street? No, they wouldn't. Would they know Ben Habib if he walked down the street?
No.
Love him dearly? No, they wouldn't. Did they know Nigel Farage? Yes, they do. A fact that's just been pointed out to me here, that Rupert was informed of the independent investigation on the 28th of February. Yeah. His interview in the Mail appeared 7 days later on the 5th of March.
But hang on, there's a difference here. This is a mistake by Reform to keep playing that line, because I interviewed him on the 25th of February, 3 days before he was told about the investigation. So it was nothing to do with trying to preempt the investigation. We just didn't run the interview for nearly 10 days.
But then it can't be about, as a response to your interview, oh, we've got more to talk about. Don't go anywhere. Some more weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we've got a colder week ahead, especially compared to last week. Sunny spells, scattered showers with the return of some overnight frost. So we've got a band of rain across northern parts of Scotland into northern England. This is a cold front introducing colder air behind it. Across much of England and Wales, it is going to be a little bit cloudier than recent days, with perhaps some outbreaks of rain across the south coast. But there'll be some brighter interludes in between, with murky conditions along the eastern coast. But across the south, still, temperatures not doing too bad, 13 to 15 degrees. But in the north, that's where we'll see the change to colder conditions, so a colder day to come. Now, as we go through Monday evening, it's a case of clear spells across Scotland with some showers, especially across eastern areas, and turning much colder once that sun dips away. Cloudier skies across Northern Ireland and into northern parts of England with some patchy outbreaks of rain. That's gradually going to sink its way southwards and through into Monday around 6 p.m, still seeing some outbreaks of rain across the far southwest. So as we go through Monday night and into Tuesday, clearer skies developing across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, with cloudier skies further towards the south of that. There'll be some frequent showers as well down the east coast, some of these a little bit wintry, but we will see the return of frost. So a colder start to Tuesday morning, especially across the northern half of the UK. So as we go through Tuesday morning, then it is a case of some bright skies, especially across the north, but cloud will gradually clear its way southwards, so turning drier across southern parts of England with some occasional sunny spells, but frequent showers across eastern areas. Some of these are still wintry, and for all of us, temperatures are falling closer to average at around 6 to 10 degrees. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A9 is partly blocked northbound when there's a fallen tree just after the A924 at Pitlochry. Buses replaced trains between Stranraer and Ayr because of a signalling problem. On the M62 in East Yorkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 37 and 38 from Howden to North Cave. The M69 in Leicestershire is closed northbound from junction 1, the A5 Hinkley and Nuneaton turn to the M1 near Leicester for an investigation. Queues from the A47. There are some cancelled trains between Reading and Basingstoke after overnight engineering works overran earlier. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking around a quarter of an hour in queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks, and the M271 in Hampshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junction 1 near Southampton and the M27 causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 a.m. on Monday the 10th of March, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Our Reform on the Rocks, Rupert Lowe, who was a Reform MP, claims he was targeted by the party for daring to criticise Nigel Farage's leadership. Is this just one big battle of egos? Can Reform UK overcome this?
Reform UK, a civil war breaks out, but where will it end? What do the KC know at the heart of this? And what's the future for Rupert Lowe, now an independent MP?
Foreign prisoner costs are £1 million a day. That's your taxpayers' money spent on restraining overseas criminals every day. Those waiting for deportation could be made to wear electronic tags.
The serious answer is to smash the gangs. We have to take those gangs down, to smash the gangs that are running this vile trade, to smash these gangs.
Sir Keir Starmer is not smashing the gangs at all. More than 4,000 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel this year alone, including a Hamas supporter who previously called for the slaughter of all Jews. This morning, his social media accounts are suspended. Funny that.
And bumper diversity pay at the BBC. Senior managers from diverse backgrounds and women get paid more than those who are not.
Welfare war. $6 billion is set to be cut from the welfare bill to get people back to work, but this could trigger the biggest revolt so far amongst Labour backbenchers.
And an interesting change in Canada. It's a name you'll know. He was the former Bank of England boss, Mark Carney. He is the new Prime Minister, and overnight he claimed that Donald Trump wants to destroy their way of life.
Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape or form.
One of my particular favourites. It is Upside Down by Diana Ross.
The King getting all trendy. He's taken to the airwaves to mark Commonwealth Day. He's given us his favourite playlist as he pledges to restore the disrupted harmony of our entire planet. Who's he getting out there?
I'm outside Westminster Abbey, where the King and Queen will attend later today for the Commonwealth ceremony. He's warning of uncertain times ahead, though. Today it's supposed to be Together We Thrive. What's next?
And Andrew Pearce, you are the man who has triggered all this drama at the Reform Party. It will probably blow over.
Of course it will.
Probably. But you played a part in this, and we're going to be discussing the dates, because you think this is important, don't you?
It is important.
Clarify.
It was when I spoke to Rupert Lowe and when he was told about the fact that the party was getting a KC-led inquiry in, it's very significant.
OK, let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say. And if you're in Great Yarmouth, how do you feel about your MP being unilaterally stripped of the whip? First, though, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom. It is just after 10 o'clock. The top story this hour for a record-breaking 10th day in a row. More small boats have arrived in UK waters, with 150 migrants making the journey this morning alone. It takes the total since the 1st of March now to more than 2,200. Another boat still in the Channel has also now made it to British waters. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are pushing to raise the minimum salary for migrants to £38,700 and tighten rules on family visas under new border proposals. MPs are also set to debate a petition calling for a 5-year suspension of all immigration after it gained over 200,000 signatures. US pressure on Ukraine to accept a ceasefire with Russia is intensifying today as top officials head to Saudi Arabia for talks. Trump has halted military aid and intelligence sharing after a public clash with Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House over ending the war. Ukraine, though, is offering access to rare earth minerals in exchange for security guarantees, but Donald Trump has at this stage made no commitments. Meanwhile, Russian drone strikes have killed at least 25 people in eastern Ukraine, as Kyiv's military claims it's shot down 130 drones overnight. Reform UK's lawyer investigating allegations against MP Rupert Lowe has denied making comments he attributed to her. Lowe, suspended from the party and now an independent MP, is accused of making threats against Reform's chairman and faces bullying claims, both under investigation. He says, though, there is no credible evidence against him, calling it a political assassination for challenging Nigel Farage. The lawyer, a King's Counsel, says she never expressed dismay or shock and is now correcting the record. Lowe is also considering legal action, accusing Reform of lying about his cooperation with the investigation. Mark Carney says Canada will never, ever be part of America after winning the race to succeed Justin Trudeau as the country's Prime Minister. The former Bank of England governor is vowing to take on Donald Trump in a growing trade war and says Canada will impose retaliatory tariffs until, he says, America shows Canada respect. Carney, who has never held elected office, won 86% of the vote and is expected to call a general election soon. And the King will lead the nation in celebrating the Commonwealth at today's annual service at Westminster Abbey, joined by the Queen, Prince and Princess of Wales and a 2,000-strong congregation. In a message, King Charles has called for the restoring of the disrupted harmony of our entire planet, saying it's the most important challenge facing humanity. And he also paid tribute to the sacrifices and selflessness of Commonwealth forces ahead of events marking 80 years since the end of World War II. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you for another look at the headlines in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Bit of breaking news for you right now. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has rejected calls from the family of murdered MP David Amess for a public inquiry into the killing. It's a letter addressed to his widow and daughter. We've got a press conference on that
with the family, yeah, so we'll bring you the latest on that. Now, let's get the latest on the is it a civil war or not with our political editor, Chris Hope, who joins us in the studio.
Well, if you're just tuning in, there's not actually a civil war. We're talking about the Reform Party.
Yes. There's five people.
You don't have to lock your front door just yet.
Yeah. The Daily Telegraph are calling it a civil war in Reform.
They'll fit into a mini, probably, one of those larger minis. That's the size of the party.
What do you think's going on here, Chris?
There's a pattern here with Nigel Farage. He doesn't like people getting maybe too big for their boots. Elon Musk started it back in January when he said, is Rupert Lowe the person who should be leading the party?
Not care about
Hang on, he did say as well that Nigel Farage should no longer be the leader.
Yes.
Who said that? Elon Musk?
Yeah, because the remarks about Tommy Robinson.
And Nigel came and styled it out and he said, I won't compromise my principles for anyone, including Elon Musk. Carry on.
Just look at the timeline. Let's look at the facts here, Bev, rather than worry about what Musk said. December the 13th, the alleged violent remarks made to Zia Yusuf that all went quiet. By Rupert Lowe came after, the day after, of an important dinner we all knew about at the time. Rupert Lowe was there supporting the party, all on the side. But since then, I've been told that Reform haven't retweeted any of his responses since that date. So something did happen on that day, a verbal falling out. We fast forward.
Which happens in politics.
It happens in politics. Yes, and he said, I mean, is a threat credible from a man who's 67 against a younger guy? I mean, let's move on. They weren't in the room. We don't know how to judge that. But let's move on to your interview, Andrew. That was on Tuesday, the 25th of February.
I went to the Commons. I was with him for 2 hours.
That's right.
Didn't run the interview for over a week.
No, indeed. But the 28th, so 3 days later, the KC was instructed, and Rupert Lowe first about the KC's looking into alleged bullying allegations involved in his office in Great Yarmouth and Parliament, not by him, as far by his own account.
Now, this is really important because there's been a suggestion. I listened to Richard Tice on various channels yesterday, suggesting, well, was this an attempt by Rupert Lowe to preempt the fact he was told about the KC-led inquiry into his office on the 28th of February? The interview in the Mail appeared sometime later. Well, it may have done, but the interview was conducted 3 days before he was told.
We don't know
anything about the KC-led inquiry.
We don't know that Lowe didn't know about the KC. He didn't mention it to you in the interview, did he?
No, he wasn't officially informed of it, though, until the 28th.
That's right. And then fast forward to last...
a hint of it when I talked.
Last week, your interview appeared on the Thursday, I think, Wednesday night, the online side, Thursday. And then by then, that's that same day, the police were called in by Zia Yusuf to look at those threats against him from December the 13th.
The same day?
Well, then Friday, all hell breaks loose.
They put the statement out.
Yeah, I mean, it is... And then Sunday, we hear from the BBC have been briefed that, in fact, this KC doesn't stand by. According to Rupert Lowe, said that this KC investigating had thought there's no credible evidence. That's now denied by the KC. It's a terrible mess. I've been here with this party covering it for 20 years. It happened in the UKIP days. It all just goes completely bonkers. The police get called in. I don't know why the police are involved. They've got enough to do.
Hang on. If there are two serious allegations of workplace culture bullying and Reform didn't do anything about it, 6 months later, those women come out and say that party...
We don't know 6 months.
Hang on, the Parliament investigates these things as a matter of course.
There's a process.
There is a process. So Parliament... So
Reform... But imagine how...
Reform have decided to spend their party members' money on bringing in a KC. They didn't need to, but they can say they're doing it.
Other parties don't do KCs.
Other parties don't.
But if it was... Given how vulnerable the Reform Party are to the mainstream media, not least your newspaper, and clearly you as well, we know in Spencer last week, how easy would it have been to accuse them of not taking these allegations seriously?
You just have to ask John Bercow, the Speaker, about bullying allegations, which were investigated parliamentary authorities. He's no longer allowed to have a parliamentary pass, ever. In his life. It's taken seriously.
I don't know why. Casey, I suppose, is a neutral individual. She's a woman in this case, and she can look at the kind of both sides and come to a view. But that's exactly what Parliament's meant to do. The bullying was in the office of his office in Greater Yarmouth and Parliament, but not by him, he says. So we don't know any more than that. And there's a process to go through. They should have said, if they wanted to blacken his name or announce it, or he could have said, "I've been investigated," or it might have come up in some disclosure.
But the story that Zia Yusuf, the chairman of the party, was so mortified by the apparent threat of violence from the party chairman in December 30th. It took him until last week, the day after the Rupert Lowe interview appeared, to tell the world he's called in the police the day before, makes this look like this is knee-jerk reaction.
It is a huge shame for Reform UK parties. I think Rupert Lowe is making some real ground with his use of... Well, it's popular on social media, but I think the ground...
illegal migrants, really popular.
Well, yeah, and hard to do because of ECHR. But the way he's behaving in Parliament was a really effective backbench MP, putting in questions. His point was, I want to see more structure. Who is our front bench? I'm always asking that to Richard Tice on air. Who is your welfare secretary? Who is your culture secretary? There's no front bench there who can run the party, but this party is heading the polls.
And they've now removed 20% of the party in Parliament.
All he wants is have dinner with Nigel Farage and sort it out.
He's never visited the Reform offices, apparently. Rupert Lowe. He's never once been to the Reform headquarters, and he's been called in multiple times, come in and discuss our policy, and he hasn't done it. Now,
he says he can't get that meeting. By his account, he can't get that meeting.
Well, that's not what...
I've spoken to other people in Reform who say it's very hard to get into United because he's very busy.
It can't be difficult to get into the offices of your own political party.
It's very nearby. I won't say where it is. It's very nearby. Well, that's ridiculous.
And what that tells you about is that he's a man who is effectively a lone wolf and maybe will never be the team player that you need to be.
He's hard to bid. He doesn't take a salary. He takes nothing from us as taxpayers. Gives it all to charity. He's a model. I know other senior business people who want to stand for Reform UK at the election, looking at him as an example. This is very disappointing for a lot of those people who would think here's an example.
You need people like Rupert Lowe in Parliament who've had a terrific business career. They know how to run things. They know how things should run. He still employs 3
politics. If you want to become PM, you're called primus inter pares. You're first among equals. All those 5 Reform UK MPs are meant to be equal, and it does feels as though that Farage, by Lowe's account, that Farage has got threatened by his popularity.
Where does this end, Chris? What's your view? We have the Casey inquiry.
I think we're 4 years from the election.
We don't know where.
We don't know where. I think it might calm down. I think right now everyone's very hot, very angry. I think they are silly because the MPs are so precious to a tiny party. A fifth of the party's MPs have disappeared since Friday. That's in Rupert Lowe.
Yeah. Well, we need to move on. We could talk about this all morning. I think it was also the line in your interview about you could put the illegal immigrants on an island and let the mosquitoes or the midges do the rest.
Don't you think people were cheering that?
I don't think that is going to cut through with the public, no.
I do. I think it does.
Well, I think that's an image...
Single offshore island, and it was a flippant remark. Let the midgets do the rest, but he doesn't want even.
But that's awful. That's an awful thing to say.
Well, is it not? Isn't it not worse to keep them all here, disappearing? We've got one who's crossed the channel over the weekend, who's had an overt support of Hamas. They don't know where he is.
By all means, be angry
Deport
at the system.
Them immediately.
But you're talking about the individual. There's a difference. There's a difference between being who is shaking the jar with the ants in it. Be furious at the system, but to say put them all on an island and let the midges do the work, you can't say that if you're in a political party.
Well,
it's not acceptable.
He did.
Well, he did. Yeah.
And he's allowed to. Free speech. We support that on this station.
Well, you did your work, Andrew Pearce. Right, foreign prisoners are costing the taxpayer over £1 million a day, according to figures from the Ministry of Justice.
This data, which I think is appalling, reveals that there's 10,500 prisoners from overseas in jails in England and Wales, and they cost more than £50,000 per prisoner per year. That's more than you pay at some of our most expensive private schools.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
We're joined now by retired prison governor Vanessa Frake-Harris. Good morning, Vanessa. This data will shock a lot of people. Over 10,000 prisoners from overseas in jails in England and Wales. I presume there's nothing we can really do about that if people are here and they've committed a crime.
if only it was that easy, Andrew.
Why isn't it? Because a lot of these are from Albania, Vanessa. I think the highest number are from Albania, and we know we've got a return agreement with Albania with the illegal migrants crossing, so why can't we return them to Albania? They are the largest number in our prisons.
I think because, you know, as your correspondent said, you know, we have the ECHR, and each one is entitled to legal aid to fight their corner. But let's not forget here, these 10,500 that are languishing in our prisons, many of them are either just detainees or just deportees. They've come from immigration centres because the immigration centres can't cope with them. So now this government thinks that by tagging them and just releasing them, that's going to solve the prison overcrowding crisis, which to my mind is quite worrying because, you know, many of these people haven't got links with this country. So, you know, what are we going to do? House them, give them jobs, give them benefits? You know, to my mind, this is not the answer. I agree with you, Andrew. Let's deport them all. Let's hire a plane, get them all on it, and away they go. But unfortunately, the ECHR won't let us do that.
So what can the government do to mitigate this in any way? Because the prisons are bursting at the seams, Vanessa. You know that. You ran a prison. You know about how they're like tinderboxes in there, aren't they? At any moment we could have disturbances. And they're releasing prisoners early, and yet we've got 10,500 prisoners from abroad languishing in our jails. What can they do? Are their hands tied?
Well, I think the government needs to look at the individual countries of prisoners that we've got and demand that they take them. If not, if they refuse, then stop visas for people coming from those countries. I think the government's got to be hard on this. I can't quite see it from this government, I'm afraid. You know, you only have to look at the boat crisis coming over. So I think, you know, they could do much, much more. I don't think that tagging them and letting them out, when particularly they've caused issues in immigration centres and violence, etc., disturbances, and the immigration centres can't cope with them, so they end up in jail. And that is part of the issue, I think.
All right, Vanessa, really interesting take on it. Vanessa Frake-Harris there, retired prison governor. You've all been getting in touch at home about this reform situation. Penny says Lowe and Habib should join UKIP if they disagree with reform instead of acting in the way they are accusing Nigel and Reform. I thought they both cared about our country. Janet says Ben and Rupert have some extremely dogmatic views that not everyone agrees with. Lot of you getting in touch.
We want to make your spring spectacular. It doesn't feel very spring-like today,
Oh, yesterday was lovely, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. So in our latest British giveaway, with your chance to win, now it's £17,777, all the sevens, in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also win not one, but two sought-after designer watches and a designer bag. Bev's got her eyes on that, obviously.
You are.
Want to look and feel the part this spring? Well, here's all the details you'll need.
We want to spruce up your spring with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you like. That could be your summer holiday or just the chance to send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. But that's not all, as you'll also receive not one, but two brand new designer watches and a fabulous Mulberry handbag. For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Well, this is Chris.
This is
Biggins.
the Botticelli's Venus.
Well,
right?
this gets me incensed. This is unbelievable.
Right.
Woke union chiefs.
No, but there we are. There's the famous
have
painting.
said that this must be taken down.
The birth of Venus.
This must not be watched. You mustn't look at this.
And there's a trigger warning.
Trigger warning.
As well, right?
Yes.
And I don't know who's put the trigger warning on this. Is it the museum where it's held, or
Some union chiefs.
Oh, right.
Woke union chiefs. I mean, this is
so.
just...
What is the offence now with that? What?
You can see her belly button.
Oh.
And a little bit of her titties. I mean, it's a beautiful painting.
Yeah, the trigger warning is that this painting may involve nudity. Well, it is a Botticelli, it is Venus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to involve nudity.
And there are lots of wonderful paintings that involve nudity. You can't suddenly say now, in 25, you can't look at these.
You'd have to shut down every art gallery in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it would be ridiculous.
We are living in 1984 now, aren't we? I mean, not literally the year, but the whole censorship thing. It's like groupthink, you must do this, you must do that. You can't have independent thought.
Yeah.
You can't look at works of art in case you start thinking the wrong way.
It's just like newsflash, classical paintings will probably have nudity in them.
Yes.
You're right. Angling, and
And compared to what you can see on Instagram.
Well, yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
10:23, Britain's Newsroom. Beverly just got back. I thought she was going to get me some biscuits, but actually...
Quick loo break.
No
biscuits today.
It's Lent, I shouldn't be having biscuits.
Maybe our guests have brought them for us. We are joined by former MEP Annunziata Rees-Mogg and former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot in the studio. Morning to you both. Annunziata, you have some history with Nigel Farage.
So one way to put it.
What is your assessment? I'll let you sum it up, but what is your assessment of what's happened?
Just to remind people, you were a Brexit Party MEP.
I was a Brexit Party MEP in 2019, and before the general election that year, I left the Brexit Party because I didn't agree with Nigel Farage's policy of putting up Brexit Party candidates against staunchly Eurosceptic Conservative candidates, where the result would be for Labour to win. And that did happen in dozens of seats across the country.
You mean in the
2019 election?
Yeah, right.
And so I decided to leave. But I therefore was part of trying to have constructive conversations with Nigel. And Nigel has very strong views, but that's what makes him and his party so successful, that he has his own very clear vision. He knows what direction he wants to take, but he is not very good at listening to other voices. And Rupert Lowe is a very successful businessman. He always struck me as very capable, very mild-mannered. He was not sort of in the rumble of the team, but he was a sage advisor and extremely friendly with it. I certainly wouldn't have expected any violence or any of those sorts of things from him at any point. But I can see that as a successful businessman, he expects to have his voice heard. And now that they are on an almost equal footing as MPs, it's very hard for Nigel to be the entirely out there on his own leader. That is what he is used to doing in the Brexit Party, in Reform before they were MPs, to set the entire path and all the policies himself.
But when you've got an MP Matthew, giving an interview to a newspaper saying he's not sure whether the leader of the party could be Prime Minister and saying he has messianic problems, what does that leader do? Because he's going to be a pain for the next 4 years.
Yeah, you have to discipline. I think all good leaders will show that. I think you should be allowed to critique the leader. You know, it would be in a mess if you couldn't do that, and it would be a scary prospect. However, I think there's a way to do it in a collegiate and respectful way. And Rupert, being, you know, the sort of outspoken character he is, has said it in his own terms. And I think actually what seemed to irk Nigel more from his statement that he came back with straight after was the idea that they're a protest party. And I think this is a man who wants to be seen as a potential future Prime Minister and having a real say on how the country is governed. Well, that isn't what a protest party is. You want to be a party of government, you want to be a party for everybody, for the people. And he probably felt slightly undermined by Rupert Lowe at the very least.
What do you make of the timing of the police, the fact that the chairman of the party, Z Yusuf, he's not here, we have asked him to come on, we've discovered, told the police the day the article appeared with Rupert Lowe criticising Nigel Farage's messianic qualities, and that they then revealed to the world that the police have been called in the following day. Does it smack to you of very seasoned, thought-through policy and philosophy, or does it smack to you of a knee-jerk response?
Yeah, it stinks. I think they want rid of Rupert. That's clear as day, to be honest with you. And I think I noticed on Camilla Tominay's show on Sunday that when Rupert Tice was asked, you know, would he be welcome back? Richard Tice, sorry. He wouldn't commit. So the idea is, even if he's cleared of all these allegations, we don't care. Whip's been removed, and that's the end of that. They want him out because he's either seen as a troublemaker, he will be, you know, causing chaos, he's too outspoken. I think if it's true of what Rupert Lowe's been asking for, it's fairly straightforward. You know, he wants to be aware of policy before the public does. I think that's a fair ask. I think there needs to be an element of policy formulation rather than what it appears to be, to me, from the outside, as potentially Richard Tice and Nigel Farage coming up with it on the hoof in their own discussions. And you've got to have a professional outfit. You know, you want to talk about running the country.
And you also need a leader for the position you're in. And there is absolutely no doubt that Nigel Farage is without parallel as a charismatic, front and centre leader of a party to get it attention, to get it following. But quite often we see in business that the people who set up a business, the entrepreneurs, are not actually the best people to then run it once it's a big, clunky organisation. They're really different skill sets. And I think there might well become a point, and I think Rupert Lowe actually said this to you, that you really have set the agenda for the last week, Andrew, but that they need to change their perception to a much more serious. I think they're very respected, but I'm not sure people are yet sure they're the right people to run the country. And if they want to win, they do have to show that. And that should never mean sidelining or getting rid of Nigel Farage. But it might mean that he has the role of leader, not policymaker, not the organiser.
Almost like a party chairman on the side of...
Exactly.
Brilliant communicator.
As they used to be.
But Nigel's often said, if somebody comes along before the next election who is better at running the Reform Party than me and leading the country, leading the party, I will step aside. He said that many times. He has said that many times.
Leaders, in my view, have to be dragged out of their job, whoever they are, screaming and shouting.
Yes, but if you think about the journey that Nigel Farage has been on, from absolute social pariah to somebody that's actually very popular, and actually very popular with the younger generation, particularly after I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Now, you might think that sounds trite, but when you have teenagers in your house and they're going to be a voting age at the next election, that is important. Rupert Lowe does not have that. Ben Habib does not have that.
And I don't think either of them have turned around and said, I want to be the leader, but I think there does probably have to be an acceptance that we all have skill sets, and Nigel's are huge, but it might not be that running a boring bureaucratic organisation with hundreds of branches, thousands of members, they're changing the structure so it's meant to be more democratic. All of that needs to be taken into account when you've got to manage MPs, you've got to keep the team together. That is not going on stage and being that amazing charismatic leader that he no doubtedly is. I think the real sadness is this is detracting from the entire political debate that, in fact, we want the ideas, the policies, the thoughts coming through, particularly from my perspective on the right, whether that's Reform or the Conservatives. And this is all just giving the whole of politics a bad name again. So the sooner they can clear it up amongst themselves.
Yeah, because the trouble is, it's just a plague on all the houses, because we were sick of the Tories because they were fighting and squabbling and falling out. And I suspect we're going to see a major big fallout with Labour this week over welfare. Yep. And now Reform, who were the new kids on the block, the breath of fresh air, the insurgents. They've got 5 MPs, they've now got 4. They've lost 20% of the parliamentary party. We've not even done a year yet.
No, really, it smacks of a lack of professionalism. I think the way that you would deal with so-called troublemakers, it's always been a long-held thing of if you think there's a potential leadership candidate in the opposition, you bung them off to be Foreign Secretary or Shadow Foreign Secretary. You get them out of the country and let them go off and do whatever. Why is Nigel not tasking MPs with roles, Shadow, the spokesperson for welfare, for the rural affairs or wherever they see their strength?
And actually that's something he's done in the past. When we were MEPs, he would say to someone, I want you to focus on farming or agriculture in European terms, go off and really research it, put together a policy. The problem was that when those came back, they went in the bin.
What, he rejected them?
Which is his right as a leader, in fairness.
It was a project to keep people busy rather than a serious request for policy.
And the only thing I would say about Rupert Lowe is if he's welcome to take my advice or leave it, and I imagine he would leave it, but stop tweeting. He sounded like a teenage girl this weekend about how hurt he is and the loyalty. Get yourself an advisor with all the money you've got, because he's shown, and as has Reform, a real political naivety about letting this play out.
And actually, when you did the interview with Rupert last week, when it was in the paper, I said to you, did you have to get permission from the party to do the interview? Did Rupert have to get permission from the party? He was just free to give that interview. Now, that doesn't smack of its dictatorship for me.
No, he's a backbencher.
You've got MPs who can just go, who can sit down with Andrew Pearce, who you know he's going to flatter him and get the best out of him. And he fell for it. And I think the Twitter thing is really interesting because Rupert is very busy on X. A lot of people won't know that if you're not on X. But he gets a lot of love on social media.
He's got over 300,000 followers.
300,000 followers. But everything that he tweets lands very well with the people who follow him. They tell him how much they love him and that he's the saviour. And I think it probably went to his head.
I think that's true of every MP. The people attracted to standing in front of crowds, giving speeches, knocking on doors, saying, vote for me because I am wonderful. Those are the kind of people who have those sorts of egos.
But some people get a really hard time on Twitter and he doesn't. He gets a huge amount of love from the people who follow him, telling him he's right, you're right, you're right. No wonder he sat down with Andrew and said, I'm not sure we got the right leader of the party.
And this is the advice I've given to every MP I ever work for. Stop looking at the comments, because for all the ones that you will see, kissing your backside, you're the best sliced bread, you'll sort of ignore the ones that are calling you out and actually leave that to a comms professional who will articulate the message that you want, and you don't need to worry. You just need to worry about the message you're putting out. Don't worry about what everyone else says and what they're doing, and it infuriates me the amount of MPs that run their own social media.
I do think what it also says, it's a story also of two spectacularly large egos.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon in politics either.
But it's really not all men.
Think Brown and
Sorry,
Blair.
men. But it is so...
It normally is.
Mano, oh, mano.
That's right.
There is,
Think Brown and Blair.
And I've said this to Nigel, myself, and to the Yusuf, you need more women in your party. You need some
I've also said that to Nigel. They have a bit of a problem with it.
I was going to say this was a he says, she says story, but there isn't. It's just he says.
Yes.
And actually, a critical friend... Female
probably the most senior woman in Reform is Anne Widdecombe, of whom I'm a great admirer. But she's the spokeswoman for what?
I don't think she is for anything, is she?
I'm not sure Anne Widdecombe really represents me.
Oh.
Women, Anyway.
Controversial. What else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about something else.
Talk about woke RAF.
Oh, I love this story.
Top Gun pilots in Seattle.
Oh, I just despair. But isn't this an example of where DEI is actually deeply dangerous? It is not a nice thing to do. It is not a beneficial thing to do. It's a blinking dangerous one.
So that's diversity, equity and inclusion. We should just point out we use those acronyms.
Yes. But the RAF has had a secret policy of declining applications from straight white men, essentially.
Unbelievable. To be pilots,
to be pilots. But they haven't managed to get get enough recruits who are not straight white men. So they've had to go back crawling to all the applicants that they declined, because there's now a 30% shortfall because of them trying to meet these targets.
They wanted 40% women, 20% ethnic, and to hell with the rest.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And the Prime Minister's trying to put planes in the sky above Ukraine. That's another argument, of course. Difficult if you haven't got any pilots.
Very difficult. But simultaneously, there is another story in the papers today that China has been trying to poach our pilots.
Funny that.
And it is now illegal for former, obviously you do have to leave the RAF to go and join the Chinese Air Force, for former RAF pilots to take a job with the Chinese. But the Chinese are offering £240,000. And our RAF cannot begin to compete with that. But the very least we should do is be trying to find the brightest and the best, and I couldn't care less.
Best man or woman for the job.
From any background, who cares? I want the best people.
Matthew, can we talk about, talking of DEI, the BBC is paying more for senior managers if you are not a man, a straight white man.
Yeah, so I read this and I don't like a lot of this stuff. I think it's right that, you know, you should have the most experience, the best, the whatever. And I think Donald Trump, in a weird way, has done us a bit of a favour of bringing DEI to the forefront, because I think diversity is a good thing. And I do think you need people of different backgrounds to give different perspectives. And my biggest bugbear, which you'll have heard me say before, is we never talk about class when it comes to diversity. And regardless of your race, regardless of your religion, regardless of your sexual orientation, it is your class that will ordinarily be the single biggest denominator in how your life may pan out. The only thing with the BBC thing is, it sounds shocking on first reading. It depends on experience, I think. So they say the senior management who are lesbian, gay, bisexual or trans have 16%, nearly 16% on average more than white people's salaries, white straight white men. But again, I think experience. If me and Andrew went for a job, Andrew's, you know, proud gay man, I'm not, he'd have a bigger argument to go, well, I've been in this industry longer than you. And I think back to when I worked in the media very briefly, the top table of the company I was at, everyone was gay. Therefore, they're going to be on more money. I still think it should be who is the best and who is the most experienced. I just don't know whether the data is how it looks, basically. So I think, in principle, yes, you want the best people. And I think diversity is a good thing across the board of different things. But I'm unsure whether it's... And you look at the top 10 presenters, you know, the highest earners at the BBC. Out of the top 10, there's only one that isn't white or straight. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts a little bit with the BBC. They're never going to get it spot on. But I do think we have to have a proper conversation about class when it comes to diversity schemes.
This is just more targets. Andrew, you mentioned the 40-20. This is now the 50-20-12.
Right.
They want 50%. How did it work? Women, 20%, BAME, and 12% disabled. Now, at the moment you have set those kind of targets, you're not going to get the best people, because every interview is undertaken through a prism of, can we get someone who will meet this box, not can we get the best person for the job. And I think the BBC has been in quite a lot of trouble recently for various different issues. And its trust levels are falling, its innovation is falling, its regard across the world is falling drastically. Part of that will be that they are not hiring the best people for the jobs.
What do you think of Matthew's point about the fact that social class is a factor here?
It's incredibly important. The most underprivileged group of people in this country are white boys.
White working class.
White working class boys. And they don't get into any of these targets. Actually, they're actively discriminated against. And that's very worrying.
It's also condescending. No,
we're going to leave it, because we're going to go now to the press conference where the family of the murdered MP Sir David Amess is holding a press conference after the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's decision to reject their call for a public inquiry into his murder. This is his daughter, Katie Amess.
Well, those questions that need answering still need answering today. And Sir Keir, we're coming to see you on Wednesday. Please reconsider the government's position. And please hear us when we come to you and say that there must be a public inquiry so that this family can have the answers that they so desperately need. Thank you. I'll hand over to Katie now.
There are no words to describe the unbelievable pain of losing a father in such a brutal and a senseless way. From the moment that I woke up on October the 15th, 2021, my whole world was shattered beyond repair. My father, Sir David Amess, was not just a public servant. He was my protector, my guide, my greatest champion, and above all, my friend.
Take your time. Take your time. Some deep breath.
His murder has left an unimaginable void in my family's life that no amount of time will ever heal. And it's difficult to describe the words and to explain what life is like when you lose a loved one to murder. Unless you have lived through something like this, you will never truly understand it. Murder is a crime that leaves a profound and a lasting impact on the victims' families because it's so sudden and unimaginable and just shocking. It leads to shock and disbelief on one hand, and then also gut-wrenching pain on the other. Working through all of the additional distress, having to deal with the police, the courts, the coroners and the media just adds to this pain, and ultimately you are left with an absolutely burning anger inside of you, but also a desire for justice and to get the answers that you deserve. You don't just want justice in terms of the murderer being put in prison, but you want, in our case, the authorities and the government to be held accountable as they let my father down so badly. His death was entirely preventable. And where do you go from that? Grief is not just a sadness, it is an unrelenting, crushing, suffocating, unbearable weight. And since that awful day, I struggle to breathe, to sleep. I'm scared to be alone. I fear every noise outside. I am worried that another one of my loved ones might be taken from me. I have to have therapy. I have to be on medication. And I've had to put my life on hold just to try and survive. I still wake up most mornings praying that this is just a nightmare and that I will hear my dad's voice again and see his beautiful beaming smile. But I never will. My father dedicated his life to public service. He worked tirelessly, not just for power or for political gain, but because he actually cared about this country and his constituents and the people. He didn't care what politics, what religion, what economic status you were. He just wanted to help you. He often voted against his party just to stick up for things that he believed in. He was a man of his word, a man of the people, and a man of God. He was one of the hardest working people I have ever met in my life. I would often come home late at night from a nightclub or a party and find him up in the early hours of the morning still working away because there might be just one more person that he could help. He did not see politics as a career. He saw it as his duty. He was a compassionate, kind, and deeply moral man, and I think that the thousands of messages of support and the outpouring of grief across the world attest to that. Throughout my life, I watched as he put other people before himself constantly. He never turned anyone away. He never said no. Even after church on Sundays, there would be a rush of people lining up to try and get his help, and he never said no. He belonged to the people that he served. And tragically, that is how he was taken. Meeting somebody that he believed needed help. He would have met that man with open arms and a huge smile. And that is how he met his end, in a church. What makes this even harder to accept is my dad wasn't just killed in a random act of violence. He was targeted. He was killed because he was a pillar of our society and our political system, something that his murderer hated. This is not just a personal tragedy, although of course it is my family who feel the pain the most, but it is also an entirely preventable murder and an attack on democracy itself. And yet this atrocious murder has been watered down and brushed under the carpet. If an elected member of parliament is not safe in our own community, then none of us are. My father was a public figure, but he was also a human being, a husband, a father, a son, a brother, and a friend. His murder is not just about our family's loss, it is about the safety of every representative who dedicates their life to serving the public. It is about the safety of every person who simply wants to be able to disagree peacefully and respectfully without the fear of violence. We cannot just walk away from this killing and think, oh well, we did all we could, it's just one of those things, that nothing more could have been done. No, that simply will not do. Losing my father has stolen so much from us. In the weeks before his murder, he was helping me to plan my wedding, a day he had looked forward to more than anything. It was his absolute dream to walk one of his children down the aisle at the crypts at the Houses of Parliament, and we were just 6 weeks away from that dream. He had planned everything, from the flowers to the music. He had even planned a surprise photo shoot where my husband was going to wear the same suit that my dad had worn to marry my mum all those years before. He was so excited and was telling everyone just how amazing the wedding was going to be. In his bag, on the day that it happened to him, when the police handed his bag back, I found a notebook with all of his plans in it for the wedding. They included a surprise stilt walker, a Eurovision Song Contest participant, and a horse and carriage. Whether I wanted these things at my wedding or not, I was going to have them. He had just picked out the suit he was going to wear to walk me down the aisle in. Instead of wearing it on my wedding day, that is the suit that we buried him in. I will never forget seeing that suit hanging up, waiting to be put on his cold, dead body. His shoes, his socks. We had just chosen the piece of music that we were going to walk down the aisle to. The next time I heard that piece of music, they were bringing his coffin down the aisle. As we left the church on the day of his funeral, I realised we were walking down the aisle that my mother had walked down as his bride 38 years before. And now she was walking it as his widow. Everywhere I turn, I am reminded of what has been stolen from us. The invitations he helped me make sit unopened, constant reminders of what could have been. I will never have a wedding picture with my father, even though he had already bought all the frames. My future children will never meet their grandfather. My children will never know him or his laugh. They will never be taken on adventures like I was as a child. All they will have is pictures and stories, and that is simply not enough. Why do I share all this personal pain and agony with you? It's because it matters. It really matters. I want Sir Keir and Yvette Cooper to know exactly what the consequences are when the very government agencies that are set up to protect people like my dad and members of the public fail. Doing paper review after paper review like what has happened since my father's murder is simply not enough. We know that there were serious failings with both Essex Police and the Prevent programme. But what we don't know is why, who was responsible, and what is being done to ensure that another family never has to go through this pain. What happened to my father should never, ever have happened. And yet here we are. A man who spent his life trying to help others was killed in a brutal, cowardly attack. And we still do not have the answers that we need. His killer was known to the agencies, and yet he was let free to rip our lives apart. And now, to make matters even worse, the Home Secretary has written to us ahead of our meeting to let us know that we will not be getting the public inquiry that we have been demanding. She and the Prime Minister have refused to grant us the public inquiry. This decision is an absolute insult and a betrayal to my family and our father's memory. How can the government justify holding inquiries for other tragic events like Southport and Nottingham? Yet they refuse to investigate the very system that failed my father. Is his life worth less than the others? Does our family not deserve the answers that the other families so rightly deserve? We need to be sure that this never happens again. Yvette Cooper has strung us along for months, suggesting that she was working on ways to help us. However, all she has done is remove the possibility of us being included in the Southport inquiry. Instead, she had offered us another useless paper review done by a person of their choosing. This appears to be an attempt to placate me and to make me go away, but I do not accept that. Our time has been wasted and it has caused further pain and heartbreak by giving us a small glimmer of hope only to crush it. The refusal to hold a public inquiry only adds to our suffering, and it makes us feel abandoned, ignored, and disposable. The government has a duty to protect citizens and those who serve the public. My father was failed in the worst way imaginable, and yet those responsible refuse to be held accountable. The actions of the government have left us in about £30,000 worth of debt, and this should never have been necessary. If they are hoping that my resources and that my grit will run out, it won't. And I will keep coming back time and time again until I get the justice that my father deserves. To Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, who we are meeting on Wednesday, I say this: do not let my father's murder be forgotten. Do not let his death be just another statistic. On Wednesday, when we meet with you, we will be asking you to reconsider this appalling decision. The reviews and the reports that have been written so far just do not hold water, and if anything, they raise more questions than answers. Please give us the public inquiry and the answers that we in the public need. Give us the justice that we deserve. You both claim to have been his friend. You were both at his funeral. Well, as his friend, his colleague, and as a human being, please do the right thing by him. I would like to conclude by making two final points. Firstly, given that my dad was who he was, we feel totally let down by the government who were in power at that time. They also claimed to be his friend. They were also at his funeral. But they were the ones who had the power at the time to launch an inquiry, and yet they chose not to. They walked away and abandoned us as a family. It cannot be right that we had to rely on the sheer luck of bumping into Rad and him volunteering to help us get justice for my dad. It cannot be right that those who are responsible for public safety are shying away, and we literally have to rely on the help of a Good Samaritan. Perhaps my father's so-called friends would like to visit his grave. Perhaps they would like to think about ways that they can be more like him. Perhaps they might fight for the truth and help us get justice. This is not a political game where you get to brush things under the carpet and sweep things under the rug in order to negate your wrongdoings and to make yourself look less negligible. This is someone's life we are talking about. I can see what you are doing and you will not pull the wool over my eyes. This is clearly something that we do not know in my father's case. Neither government want to touch this with a barge pole. What is it that they do not want us to know? There is a wall of silence. If they care so little for a friend and politician, how little do they care for us, the public? Secondly, we had asked the Prime Minister to allow us to have media in our meeting on Wednesday. We know that this is something that he allowed the Nottingham families to do when they went to meet with him. He has refused to allow us even to do that. It is now clear that he used the Nottingham case to make himself look good because he wanted the media there to record him announcing an inquiry. He knows that he will be letting us down on Wednesday, so he does not want you there to hear that. But he has to be consistent. He can't pick and choose. Are the Nottingham families and the Southport families more important than ours? I am now calling for him to reconsider that decision and to allow you, the media, to come with us so you can see and hear what he is saying and hold him accountable. I have lost the most important man in my life. My family has been broken beyond repair. But if my father's death can lead to real change, if it can save at least one other family from having to go through this, then at least we know that his sacrifice was not for nothing and his death will not have been in vain. My father gave everything to the city of Southend and to this country, and now it is time for this country to honour him with the full truth of this entirely preventable death. Finally, I would like to thank the public and you, the media, because it is only because of you that I am now being able to get my story out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. We now have a statement from Lady Amos herself. Are you okay to read that out?
Yeah.
Water?
Thank you.
If you're listening on the radio, this is Katie Amos. She is the daughter of the murdered MP David Amos, who died in 2021. And she's calling for a full judge-led public inquiry.
Which has been rejected even before she started speaking. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said that's not going to happen. She's now reading a statement out from her mother, Lady Amos.
Everything. Our love, our family, our home, and a deep commitment to public service. David was not just my husband, he was my closest friend, father to our 5 children, and a man who lived to serve his constituents. His kindness, warmth, and unwavering sense of duty defined him. He believed in making the world a better place, one small act of kindness at a time. His murder tore our family apart in ways and words that we cannot fully capture. The loss is immeasurable. We are completely heartbroken. Every day we wake up with the unbearable reality that he is no longer here. That is my first thought every day, my last thought at night, and every waking moment in between. I am lost. His absence is felt constantly in every unshared moment, in every milestone that he is not there to share in. We have spent the last 3 years trying to grieve, but being unable to. Although we can take some small comfort from the fact that his killer will never be released, we feel that from the start we have been denied access to the truth about what led to David's entirely preventable murder. When David was taken from us, we believed, like any family would, that there would be a full and thorough investigation into how and why this was allowed to happen. We trusted that the government would do everything in their power to examine the failures that led to his death and to ensure that no other family endures the pain that we have suffered. Yet despite our repeated calls, we have been denied the one thing that can provide us real answers: a full public inquiry. We know that there were serious failings both with Essex Police and the Prevent programme. We know that opportunities were missed. We know that the system designed to protect people like David let him down. And still, we are being told that a patchwork of paper reviews into what happened is enough. It is not. To pour salt onto the wound, Yvette Cooper has now written us a totally unacceptable and, quite frankly, insulting letter, confirming that the government will not be holding an inquiry and that the investigations to date should satisfy us. Well, I can tell her that they most certainly don't. On Wednesday, my daughter Katie and I will meet with the Prime Minister at his request with our advisors to make one simple demand: a full public inquiry into David's murder. He must go away and reconsider the government's position and call us back to confirm that an inquiry will be granted. Not just for our family, but for the security of all the public servants and for every citizen who deserves to know that when the state fails, it will be held accountable and that steps will be taken to ensure that there is never a repeat. We do not want words. We will not just accept platitudes. We now know that this is why he wanted to meet with us and call us to Downing Street on Wednesday. We want the truth, and we want action, and we will not rest until we know that no stone has been unturned in investigating what went so badly wrong in the lead up to David's murder. David dedicated his life to serving this country. The least that this country can do is give him the justice that he deserves. Lady Julia Amos.
Thank you, Katie. Happy to take any questions that anybody has. Dom.
Reading a statement on behalf of her mother. Now, that's quite significant because her mother, Julia, she was married to David Amos for 38 years. It's pretty much her lifetime, isn't it? Has not spoken out in public at all. So that's the first time we've heard words from her, albeit read by her daughter, Katie.
Katie's one of 5. There are 4 daughters and 1 son, but Katie's very much been the spokesperson.
She has.
Actress in
She is. She is. And, of course, I'd forgotten, how could you forget? Extraordinary, numbing. She married 6 weeks after her father died.
Oh, awful. A lot of you getting in touch and saying you didn't think you'd be crying this morning, but you're watching that wiping tears from your eyes. Very powerful testimony. Now, to continue watching the family of Sir David Amos there at that press conference as they call for this public inquiry, you need to go to GBN2, scan the QR code on screen now on your phone. You can watch it on your phone, or go to GBNews YouTube channel and select GBN number 2.
Monday, 10th of March, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So Reform are in trouble this morning. Rupert Lowe claims that he was targeted for criticising Nigel Farage's leadership. Is it one big battle of the egos, or will it just blow over?
And breaking news, you've heard that emotional input from the daughter of David Amos, the Tory MP, who was slain by a lunatic, frankly. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has rejected a call for a public inquiry into his murder just a few moments before Katie Amos spoke this morning.
Losing my father has stolen so much from us. In the weeks before his murder, he was helping me to plan my wedding, a day he had looked forward to more than anything. It was his absolute dream to walk one of his children down the aisle at the crypt at the Houses of Parliament, and we were just 6 weeks away from that dream.
More than 4,000 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel this year, including somebody closely involved with Hamas, who's previously called for the slaughter of all Jews. This morning, his social media accounts are suspended, but where is he?
Well, another 3 small boats have crossed the English Channel so far today, with 150 migrants on board. And as we speak, we can confirm that 2 more small boats are in the water heading towards the UK.
And we've got a pilot shortage, and guess why? The RAF doesn't have enough pilots to deploy jets to Ukraine because of a failed drive to get 40% women, 20% ethnics into cockpits of our planes.
Talking about diversity, no bad thing at the BBC. Senior managers there from diverse backgrounds, and women get paid more than men or those who are white British born. Katie Amos's testimony there is
moving.
So moving.
Yeah.
She speaks so powerfully. She makes a really good point about the fact that there are judge-led inquiries.
Southport?
For Southport, which was Axel Rudikabana,
yeah,
killed those poor little girls at the Taylor Swift dance concert. And also Kalakane, Barnaby Webber's mother, who's been on this show many times, went to Downing Street and was given that inquiry. And so Katie's argument is saying, well, why can't we have one for my father?
And the point about it is Ali Harbi Ali, who murdered David Amos, only the second MP to be murdered in 30, 40 years. By the way, he was born in Southwark in Britain, son of Somali parents, was investigated by the PREVENT programme, which is supposed to weed out potential terrorists. They had him under surveillance for a year, and then in 2016 they said, no threat. No threat. This was a man who was regularly spotted outside the home of the very senior Cabinet Minister Michael Gove, sizing up the joint, but decided it was easier to murder a backbench MP. A backbench MP, by the way, who I've known for 25, 30 years, one of the most mild-mannered, nicest MPs you could ever meet, actually, David Amos. And he went to his constituency surgery, which was being held, believe it or not, in a church, and stabbed him more than 20 times.
So I've got Yvette Cooper's letter here that she's given to the family this morning. She says that she is going to appoint an independent external reviewer to look across the findings.
What does that mean? Of
the investigative work and scrutiny already completed or underway through Lord Anderson's review, the coroner's inquest and the Essex police complaint.
But it wasn't a full inquest either. And that's something which has caused great angst.
Inquest.
Yeah, it was a partial inquest. I don't understand why.
Bizarre. There are so many questions, and I think for me the poignant bit of Katie's speech there was saying we can't move on. You know, hard enough to have lost your father 4 years ago now and still be crying like that in public and still be able to be so articulate and to say what a loss this is for the whole family, for those 5 brothers and sisters and his wife. And she said, we can't move on until there are questions that need to be answered. It would be such an easy win for Yvette Cooper. I don't understand this.
No, I don't.
It happened
what's
under
the optic?
Boris Johnson. When Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, this happened under the Tories. They rejected a full public inquiry. She's now rejecting a full public inquiry. She could absolutely conclude that there were mistakes under the Tory administration which led to his death. Why won't she just do it?
I don't understand it. And people will be watching that and listening. You said people are calling in their bed saying, who'd be expecting they'd be crying over their coffee this morning watching it. Because David Amos, that man should not have been in a position to murder an MP because PREVENT had been looking at him and they decided there was no threat. He'd been radicalised somehow and he travelled to Essex to kill a man, killed him in a church.
It's shocking. Simon has been in touch. Morning, Simon. Shame on Starmer, shame on Cooper, shame on Labour, shame on Parliament. How many Sir David Amoses must follow? Parliament has let this family down. It's let itself down. It's letting the country down. We lose a wonderful MP and are governed by dross. I support this wonderful daughter and salute you. My heart goes out to you. You are truly
Didn't she do well as well? Imagine trying to get through that statement, Bev. I know she's an actress, so she's used to appearing on stage, but my God. And to find that note in his briefcase about all the things he was planning for her wedding.
Marianne says, such a brave young woman. Katie's dad would be so proud of her. To deal with grief is hard enough, but to not understand how and what led up to this sad loss, the failures that might impact people in the future, it should be looked at in full. there are so many cases of the Prevent programme
failing,
not appearing to work. And Yvette Cooper, in her defence, she does say in this letter, a lot of those concerns that happened since 2021 have been addressed, and we have already put things in place to make sure these don't happen again. But do you have faith at home that it won't happen again?
And also, what does it say about our MPs? Do we want to wrap them in cotton wool? No. Do we want to put them behind barbed wire? No. We want to have access to them. But to have access to them, we want to think that they're going to be safe. And this MP was badly let down.
Well, you have made your thoughts at home very clear. Keep them coming. GBNews.com/yoursafe.
Now, at least 150 migrants have crossed the Channel illegally just today, in an unprecedented 10th day of small boat crossings.
So this includes one individual who is a Hamas supporter. He's had his social media accounts suspended this morning, and GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White will tell us more. Mark, what do we know about this guy? Where is he? How did he get here? How did he go unnoticed?
Well, he goes under the name on social media, at least, of Abu Wadi. He is an individual based over in Palestine who has been tracked by a number of groups, including the campaign against anti-Semitism, who have found that this individual has been, they claim, responsible for posting some extreme and hateful material, including calling for the death of those from Israel and the death of all Jews. In fact, he's been seen posing with automatic weapons. He was apparently also speaking at a rally that was hosted by the then Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. You remember that he was killed by the Israeli Defense Forces last year, and he was the man widely believed to have masterminded the 7th of October attack. So with all this worrying information about this man, Abu Wadi, he still made it across to the UK in a small boat, arriving in the past week. He was, as you can see there on the screen, posting, live streaming from his hotel room. Well, since then, his account on TikTok has been suspended. He's been banned from that account. This is a screen grab of the front page of his account, where he had more than 170,000 users that followed his exploits and his videos that he was posting. But what we haven't got at this stage is any confirmation from the Home Office as to whether this individual has actually been arrested. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, says that he should be detained and booted out of the country at the earliest possible opportunity, as according to Chris Philp, he is a danger, a threat to national security. But the Home Office will only say that they don't comment on individual cases. Suffice to say that the security services and the police will always keep an eye on those that they believe could potentially pose a threat to the public.
So do we know where he is, Mark?
Well, all we know is just from that live stream that at least at some point in the last few days, he was in a hotel. Now, it is possible that he has since been arrested and he is in an immigration detention, but without any confirmation of that from the authorities, then we can't say. And of course, there is a policy of not commenting on individuals. However, in extremis, when we have individuals who clearly their presence in this country is not seen as conducive to the public good, there is a great deal of anxiety that an individual like this should be in the country, especially among the Jewish community, then perhaps some indication that he has been taken into custody is actually what is required. So we're still reaching out to the Home Office to try to get confirmation. Thus far, they're refusing to say anything other than that general statement.
Mike, just briefly on that, it's just extraordinary that his face appears on the front page of a national newspaper, the Mail on Sunday. They knew very quickly who he was. How on earth did the authorities not immediately, when he arrived, putting on social media, I thank God or I thank Jesus, I'm in Britain.
I'm in Britain.
Blimmin' irony. Why did they not just immediately clap him in irons?
Well, we understand that he came into the country using another name, as so many of the migrants that do come across on these small boats do. So that may have been, in the first instance, something that then didn't alert the authorities to who he was. And he arrived a few days ago during the week, and of course the real publicity around this individual really only took off towards the weekend there. But having said that, you know, the authorities will absolutely know now. They're more than aware of him. He's splashed over most of the newspapers, and we've been covering this now for the past few days as well, since Friday when we've been mentioning him. So if the authorities are not aware of where he is, they should be, as a matter of urgency.
Mark, thank you so much, Mark White there. Honestly, the gall of it.
I know.
The gall of it.
Thank God I'm in Britain.
On a boat, and you go straight onto social media and say, thank God I've arrived in Britain. A man who said, kill all Jews.
Yeah, a man who hates everything about this country and its system and the way we do things.
The Home Office have said we are committed to ending small boat crossings which undermine our border security and restoring order to the asylum system to ensure that the rules are respected and enforced. They go on. While it is a long-standing rule that we never comment on individual cases or operational matters, the British public can be reassured that we take all steps necessary at all times to protect the nation's security.
No mention of smashing the gangs, Bev. Did you notice?
It's proving quite tricky to smash those.
As the Tories might have told them when they were in power, they were useless on this, and Labour, frankly, worse, because the numbers are even higher.
Awful. Now, as Christians across the world observe Lent, you've given up booze, haven't you?
I have given up booze.
We will be bringing you daily reflections from ministers around the United Kingdom, so sit back and enjoy. Here is today's message.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
Hi, I'm Reverend Brenda, Vicar of St Francis Anglican Church in Ingleby Barwick, Teesside. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus answers the devil's temptation by saying, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." In Lent, Christians sometimes spend extra time in studying God's word. It nourishes our souls and helps us grow closer to God. I remember in the 90s there was a comedy sketch show on TV, and Paul Whitehouse had a catchy phrase. It was this: "Ain't milk brilliant?" And milk is brilliant. It's a complete food for baby animals to help their bodies grow. And human milk, or baby formula milk, is also a complete food that helps human babies grow. But we hear that we do not live by food, by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. So I give thanks that ain't Jesus brilliant? In Lent, Christians give thanks because he is the one that feeds and nourishes our souls. Just as milk is brilliant for a growing body, Jesus is brilliant for our souls. Ain't Jesus brilliant? Amen.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I developed achalasia when I was 17, but achalasia can impact people of all ages. So what I experienced when I first developed achalasia was essentially when I was eating, food was getting stuck here, so in my esophagus, and it just really wouldn't go down. So you know when you're eating a piece of bread, a big piece of bread really fast, and it kind of gets stuck and you need water. That was my first symptom. And that was happening every now and again when I was eating, but then it started happening every time I was swallowing. So that made eating incredibly difficult and painful.
and I used to have to drink, well, I still do drink a lot of water whilst I'm eating, but I was really having to gulp loads of water in it. It was really painful at every gulp. And that led to quite a lot of weight loss. So a lot of people with achalasia, because of the difficulties they experience in swallowing, they lose weight because either they avoid food or they're regurgitating food as well, so they have to kind of get it out, and so it can be really unpleasant. Obviously, you experience a lot of pain, and it impacts on every part of your social life as well, and on your general life. People end up being malnourished, losing loads of weight, and that impacts on your everyday life and work life as well. And then people, unfortunately, also, you know, get very fatigued, experience anxiety and depression as well. So those are the impacts of achalasia.
What are the treatments? What can people do if they're suffering with this condition? What can they do?
So, I mean, obviously the first step is to get a diagnosis, and that's already quite difficult because there's low awareness of achalasia, even amongst the medical community. Getting a diagnosis can be complicated and can take quite a long time, and people can get misdiagnosed. In terms of treatment, so there is no cure.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We are joined by former MEP Annunziata Rees-Mogg and former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot in the studio. Should we talk about how dangerous avocados are?
Lethal.
Lethal.
Yep.
They're very nice on toast.
I quite like avocados. And I'm
very
always,
good for you.
They're very good for you. Lots of healthy oils and fats, but also very dangerous. Between 1998 and 2017, there were 50,000 avocado injuries in the US.
Really?
Yep. There is a whole syndrome called avocado hand that surgeons have to learn how to mend because you slice your hand down the middle. And
to get the stone out.
To get the stone out. So Alan Titchmarsh has said the simple way to avoid this danger is to just not eat avocados.
No.
I think you might just want to learn slightly better knife skills.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he says we should be having a lot to be said for cornflakes, Weetabix and Shreddies for breakfast.
Be full of sugar.
Absolutely.
Fat Britain.
One of the strangest things about this story is that the Times has used the word avers.
I know, a very odd word in a headline.
We should avoid avocados. Avers Titchmarsh.
Could he just say says? Could they just say says?
But he's also against, because they're quite bad for the climate, apparently, the amount of water it takes to... Yeah, the amount of water... I mean, I like avocado, not really bothered, and I don't like restricting people's diets necessarily, but apparently it's the amount of water that's used, the amount of transportation that's used, CO2, whatever else, I think...
It's one of those wonderful ironies that I love, the hypocrisy of people who are all into climate change and also seem to live on avocados, and actually are genuinely much worse for the environment than any of our homegrown stuff. But still, I think you should just be a bit more careful.
Just learn to
I'm not in favour of banning things. I don't think Titchmarsh is saying ban avocados.
No, I don't like banning anything, really.
Now, dangerous foreign nationals who use human rights laws to avoid deportation, Matt, will be tagged like suspected terrorists to protect the public. Will it work, or will they just work out a way to take the tag off?
No, I think not in my experience personally, but of experience of people I've known that have worn tags, you take them off.
We have a lot of experience of people
I have many
you've known
friends of many different stripes, characters and everything else.
Do you need to shed more light here?
No, it just keeps me very grounded and keeps me in touch with people at home, I think. But no, if you even damage the tag, the police will be around knocking up, putting your door through. So it'd be interesting to see if it works. I thought it was interesting that the Attorney-General, who's very big on his human rights, is all for it, because I think the unfortunate thing with...
This is Lord Hermer, Starmer's mate.
Yeah, exactly. He was a junior... underneath Starmer at the time. They were in
Matrix Chambers.
Yes, exactly. So I thought it was interesting he's all for it, because I think there's obvious sort of historical parallels with tagging and stuff sometimes that make certain liberals and wet people feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I think if you commit heinous crimes in this country, you probably don't really deserve to be here. I think there's an element of privilege in being here. We all know what certain states are like in the Middle East. I certainly wouldn't go around doing whatever I want in certain states, because that's the law. So I think the interesting policy detail will be, what are we considering a serious crime?
Doesn't this not need policy detail? What we need to do is change the human rights laws. We need to scrap the Human Rights Act. We need to leave the European Court of Human Rights. And then we would not have these people appealing, and we would not need to pay for them to be on tags. We could just remove them. Criminals who are not from this country have no right to stay in this country. No, the British people do not want that. The British people do not vote for that. And yet these rules and acts hamstring us into keeping these people here.
10,500 in our prisons as we speak, and we've got a prison overcrowding crisis, and this government has been letting thieves, convicts out early because of the crisis.
And got that very wrong as well.
Yeah,
let out lots of dangerous criminals.
Yeah.
I think we just need an honest conversation about this, that it is not sustainable to be keeping the world's criminals in our prisons or on our streets with tags. Both have a huge cost to both society and financially, and we need to get rid of the rules that mean we cannot just deport them.
Should we be keeping James Bond British, Matthew Torbett? That's the question on everybody's lips this morning.
Yes. We should. And actually, I find myself being a bit of a hypocrite, because I remember the conversations a few years ago when Idris Elba was touted to be the first sort of black Bond, and it got people irate. And then there was an idea there might be a female Bond, and I thought, oh, who cares? And then actually, when I read this interview with Piers Brosnan at the weekend, I thought, of course he should be British. What's going on here? Absolutely.
So what in that interview made you change your mind?
I don't... Maybe it's my loathing of greedy corporations, and I didn't feel comfortable at how Amazon... And quite cleverly, the way that intellectual property law is...
Amazon have bought the rights
They have bought the rights to James Bond. The idea of intellectual property is if you don't use it, you lose it. And they've spotted that, it's not been used for a while, and they've gone, right, we'll have it. And I think I'm not into it, but you see the amount of Star Wars things that have been done now, and maybe they're good and people like them, I don't know, but I feel it dilutes the quality, I think, of
what, because they've done so many extra Star Wars programs?
So, yeah, I mean, I say this as someone that's, watched very few of them, but I quite like James Bond, and I think that, are they going to ruin it, basically, is my concern.
James Bond, I absolutely adore. I have all the books, and I've read them, and they are fantastic, easy reading, page-turning...
They're all out on film,
novels. And the film...
Books are always better than films.
And the film started off like that. Yeah. Fantastic, good fun, high energy, gripping films. And I'm sorry, they've lost me.
Daniel Craig,
become
I'm afraid,
more
did
and
it?
more, what would audiences like to see? They'd like to see more guns. They'd like to see more this. They'd like to see more high-tech
Less
graphics.
Less sex.
Less innuendo. Less fun.
Yeah.
And I think they've lost their way completely since they left the books.
Roger Moore and Piers Brosnan brought humour to it.
A British James Bond, as per the books. I want to return to the books. I want them to be much more like the very, very good books they were originally based on that made great films.
Who would be your candidate?
Oh, God,
I'd go for James Norton, is mine.
Oh, he's very good, from Happy Valley.
Yeah.
So he was the baddie in Happy Valley.
Very good. Very British, very English.
Very
handsome.
attractive.
Yeah.
And I think it really, really does have to be a Brit. That, I'm sorry, people can rave all they like about Renée Zellweger as Bridget Jones. It didn't work for me.
I'm with you, 100%.
If you're going to pretend to be British, don't pretend. Be British.
We've got to touch on this, the fact that Labour are talking about reducing welfare payments, particularly to sick and disabled people. This is a Labour Party talking about doing this, Matthew Torbett.
And rapidly putting forward Conservative policies left, right and centre. This is not, I don't believe, what people voted for. People voted for change, but not basically a UK tour of punishing UK's most vulnerable people, whether that be pensioners, whether that be... There is a loophole with regard to farmers, but those family farms that are proper farmers, the 44% that do agricultural work and use the inheritance tax rules, we've now got people that are disabled and otherwise. And I just think there's political decisions that can be made, right? And there are tough decisions, don't get me wrong. They inherited a bad deal and whatever else. However, there's no Labour MP I know of that went into politics to to punish those on benefits. And there is a growing issue of the cost. But that's why we need to get people back into it, not cut them all together. And Rachel Reeves cannot make these decisions, the IFS has said, without cutting benefits.
I think they do need to cut the benefits bill back substantially, but I was shocked to hear Alex Norris, a junior MP minister today, unable to say whether a Labour government would take money off a disabled person who is incapable of work. I was shocked to hear him not just say, of course we wouldn't.
That is absolutely where I think all of us would draw a line.
Exactly.
That's completely immoral. But we have got this ridiculous situation where it would appear that Labour are trying desperately to cut benefits to encourage people back to work. And on the same day, we've got 300,000 businesses saying that because of her budget, they will be making job cuts. Now, 300,000 businesses, I don't have a figure for how many jobs that would be, but we're talking into the millions, most likely. You can't encourage people back to jobs that do not exist. What we need to do is to get this country growing, to get the demand up, to get employment up, and make it more attractive for people to work. You can't slash benefits and have no jobs available. If you're going to tell people they've got to look for jobs, they've got to be jobs for them to find. And I think we absolutely need to get a grip on our benefit system that all sorts of reasons that are not making people incapable of working are being used, because there is more security on disability benefits than there are in a huge amount of minimum wage jobs.
Well, it's going to be so interesting to see the split that causes in the Labour Party and the
domestic politics is what we'll do for them. You can stuff as much as you like on the international stage, Mr Starmer, but it's domestic politics that really care to people.
Matthew Torbett, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, thank you so much for your time this morning. Here's Sam Francis with your headlines.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11:30. The top story from the newsroom this hour. The family of Sir David Amess has slammed the Home Secretary for rejecting a public inquiry into his murder. They say it's unacceptable and insulting. Yvette Cooper says, though, it's hard to see how an inquiry would go beyond the trial of the terrorist Ali Harbi Ali and a recent Prevent review. The attacker, an Islamic State fanatic, was referred to Prevent years before stabbing the veteran MP to death at his constituency surgery in 2021. Sir David's widow is urging the Prime Minister to reconsider ahead of a meeting on Wednesday this week. Well, Sir David's daughter, Katie, says the response from the Home Secretary is adding salt to an open wound and accused the government of brushing the family aside.
The Home Secretary has written to us ahead of our meeting to let us know that we will not be getting the public inquiry that we have been demanding. This decision is an absolute insult and a betrayal to my family and our father's memory.
For the 10th day in a row, small boats have reached UK waters, with another 150 migrants arriving this morning, taking the total since March the 1st to now over 2,200 people. It comes just days after a Palestinian asylum seeker, Abu Wadi, allegedly arrived on a migrant boat before posting extremist content online. We understand his social media account has now been suspended, but the Home Office won't confirm if he's been detained. Meanwhile, the government is pushing to raise the minimum salary for migrants to £38,700 and tighten family visa rules. And MPs are also set to debate a petition calling for a 5-year suspension of all immigration after gaining over 200,000 signatures. 2 British diplomats are being expelled from Russia, accused of espionage in what's seen as the latest tit-for-tat move. Moscow says the pair carried out intelligence and subversive work and must leave within 2 weeks. It follows the UK's expulsion of a Russian diplomat last month, part of an ongoing diplomatic standoff. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has vowed to stand by Ukraine, pledging more defence spending and a coalition of the willing against Russian aggression. Moscow has condemned his calls for a peacekeeping force as tensions between the two countries hit new lows. And Mark Carney says Canada will never, ever be part of the United States after winning the race to succeed Justin Trudeau as the country's Prime Minister.
Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape or form.
Well, the former Bank of England governor's vowing to take on Donald Trump in a growing trade war and says Canada will impose retaliatory tariffs until Americans show us respect, he said. Carney, who never has held elected office before, won 86% of the vote and is expected to call a general election soon. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you very shortly. Next, it's Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Some breaking news this morning. Tower Bridge in London has just been shut down after a man has climbed up the railings, with emergency services scrambling to the scene. We'll have more on this as we get it on GB News, and no doubt it will be in the show.
And no doubt he's been inspired by the lunatic who was allowed to clamber up the top of Big Ben for 36 hours. Ridiculous. I mean, one of the most secure precincts in London, and he got up there.
Miriam Cates and Dawn Neeson are here because you're doing the cover shift this afternoon.
We are
ladies.
indeed, yes. Yeah, we're not skiing, are we, this week? Like some lucky people we could mention.
I can't ski anyway, but
no, me neither. I'm absolutely terrible. But we
I also don't like the cold. But anyway, I'm sure it's fun.
But apart from that, yeah. But we've got a cracking show for you, absolutely packed with stuff. Obviously, we're talking about the David Amess story, which I mean, Kate is.
What an easy win for the Home Secretary just to say yes.
Yeah, and it's extraordinary because Katie Amess has spoken quite a number of times to this programme. She did an exclusive interview with me for GBN Originals last month, and she was saying that under the previous government, who, you know, many of whom were her father's friends, fellow Conservative MPs and ministers, she just couldn't get any answers as to why a potential inquiry was being shut down. She thought she could start again with a Labour government who have no skin in the game, really. The failures were not on their watch, if there were any failures, and yet again she's been shut down.
Amazing.
Yeah, and on that note, we'll also be talking about Prevent. Are they the worst named organisation in the entire country on the grounds they prevent absolutely nothing?
Quite right.
And people are losing their lives. They are now a risk to all of us by just being so inefficient. But we are having some fun as well, aren't we?
We are, and we've got an interesting story about whether bouncers should be renamed, whether it's too much of a macho title. And apparently the industry has 11% female employees.
I'd say quite a lot of them are women now.
And they want to rename it something that's slightly less masculine.
Like what?
Well, exactly. And also, surely this is one of the few professions left where actually being a macho bloke is a good thing.
Yeah.
Would help.
I've bounced several people out of pubs. I really want later on.
I'm just thinking, Dawn, you could volunteer. You'd be hired.
I've done that, my love.
I'm
Don't
sure,
worry.
darling.
Don't get stroppy with me. We're also talking about curry having had its chips.
Oh. I doubt
All
that.
will be revealed.
Sounds fascinating.
Right.
Are you a Vindaloo or a...
And Dawn.
I like it hot and spicy, love.
I thought you would. Like your men. Like your men.
From midday or that next. Up next, though.
What's
my
Michael
particular
Bublé?
favourites. It is Upside Down by Diana Ross.
Michael Bublé, Bob Marley and Grace Jones also made King Charles's Commonwealth playlists. I'm going to find out what three artists would make the Andrew Pierce party playlist.
No, you're not.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:41, Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. So Tower Bridge, that iconic landmark, was shut down after a man climbed up the railings. Emergency services are literally scrambling to the scene. He's wearing a grey hoodie and dark trousers. And he's sat on top of the Grade 1 listed bridge. We don't know that he hasn't got a flag with him.
Now, it's a bit difficult to see from this image, but apparently... Oh, there he is. So he's sat on top of Tower Bridge. That is not a safe place to be.
No, it is not.
Let's be honest. He hasn't got any climbing ropes, from what we can see. He hasn't got any crampons on, has he?
No.
So...
And he doesn't appear to be... I thought maybe it was going to be another person waving the Palestinian flag, but no. So we're not sure yet what this is all about.
It might just be one of those.
Tricky for the authorities, because if they clamber up and get him and he slips... That's a long way down.
It might just be one of those... have you heard of parkour?
No.
Or free running. So people who go on top of buildings and they jump off and they film it on social media.
I have heard of that.
So parkour is the French word for free running. And they leap around on buildings.
And if that's what he does, because if you're listening on the radio, the bridge has been closed, the emergency services are there, there are police, fire brigade, ambulance. If that's what he's doing, if it's a gimmick, he should be given the bill. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Well, who knows? It doesn't look like it's obviously clearly a very safe situation. It'd be very stressful for everybody who's there on the ground, for the emergency services having to deal with it, trying to work out who he is. And like you say, how do you get him down? We'll keep you posted on that this afternoon. Now, King Charles will today celebrate the Commonwealth's power to unite nations in friendship during his annual Commonwealth Day address at Westminster Abbey. He's also expected to vow to restore what he's calling the disrupted harmony of the planet, adding that it's the most important task for humanity.
Let's get the thoughts of historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mancu, who's a great friend of this station and this programme. Rafe, good morning to you. Commonwealth Day, hugely significant for the current monarch, as it was for the late Queen Elizabeth II.
That's right. I mean, it was often said of His Majesty's late mother that the two things she was most pleased about were keeping the United Kingdom united and keeping the Commonwealth as a very important and relevant force in the world today. And that's very much the feeling of the King as well, who, of course, regards himself not only as King of the United Kingdom, but also of King of all those other realms and territories of which he's King, as well as head of the Commonwealth of 56 nations. That's why I think you're seeing such a great emphasis being placed by the King now on the fact that in this very tumultuous time that we're going through, when the Western alliance is perhaps more stressed and tumultuous than ever before, the Commonwealth is one of those rare international organizations, an organization outside America's ambit, it should be said, but it's an organization that has endured the test of time. The strong bonds that link the Commonwealth nations of common heritage, common institutions, is actually perhaps more relevant now and may become more relevant in the years ahead.
Rafe, some people may assume when he talks about restoring the disrupted harmony of the planet, planet being the operative word, he's talking about the environment which he's talked about for 40 years. But I suspect that isn't a factor. But is he also referring to the extraordinary turmoil with Donald Trump, bearing in mind Canada, of which he's king, is facing 25% tariffs from President Trump?
Yeah, precisely. Look, on the face of it, there's nothing unusual in what the king is saying in this statement. He's made many of these points before in similar addresses, but the relevance of the comments certainly must have some bearing upon international politics, and particularly on what's happening to, of course, His Majesty's senior realm outside of the UK, which is indeed Canada. We know that the king recently met with former Prime Minister Trudeau in his last few days in office. We don't know what they discussed behind closed doors, but clearly when you have another country saying that they want to take over Canada and make it a 51st state, referring to the Prime Minister Trudeau as Governor Trudeau, as if he's a governor of an American state, surely that will be a cause of concern for the King. Remember, of course, the King and Queen Elizabeth visited Canada more than any other of their Commonwealth realms. Very, very close attachment there. And also, of course, the speech is also about opportunity, because, of course, we hear about Trump's tariffs on Canada, 25%. Perhaps there'll be tariffs against other Commonwealth territories, perhaps even the UK. There's something called the Commonwealth Advantage. Because of the shared language, the shared legal system, the common law, the shared institutions, Commonwealth realms have a 21% reduction in trade costs, is understood. That's one of the benefits of the Commonwealth. That's why we're seeing the new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, as well as people like the former Australian Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, all calling for greater cooperation between the Commonwealth nations, but particularly the CANZUK nations, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the UK, the King's top four realms. There's much opportunity for them now to increase their cooperation as America becomes increasingly unreliable as an ally.
OK. Right. Rafe Haydar-Manku, always good to see you. Thank you so much. I was just looking at the breaking news about this guy on the top of Tower Bridge. How he got up there.
Quite extraordinary.
Seriously, you want to keep watching for this afternoon, because who knows what's going to happen here. He doesn't appear to have any sort of flag at the moment. Grey hoodie, black trousers.
He seemed to be in training shoes.
Trainers. Well, you wouldn't. What would you wear if you were going to climb
you
Tower
might.
Bridge?
Would you not want climbing? I've never tried to climb a bridge. Well, I have. The Sydney Harbour Bridge.
You can't do it in your loafers, Andrew Pearce.
No, Sydney Harbour Bridge. Climb that. They made us wear special boots.
He's obviously not on a tourist trip. He's
no, he's not.
Sort of agitator.
Yes, he is.
Protester.
Yes.
He's wearing his trainers. Anyway, I'm sure, hopefully, it'll be fine and they'll get him down.
And you know what? People, even if he has got a great cause and concern, this is just going to cause a huge disruption to traffic in our central London, which is already a flipping car park, thanks to what's he called, our mayor?
Sadiq Khan.
And his stupid charges.
Plenty more to come before you get rid of us. First, though, if you search some winter sun, here's the forecast for our top European holiday destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, it's actually rather unsettled across much of Europe with heavy rain and thunderstorm. This is all to do with an area of low pressure, so bringing spells of rain and some heavy and frequent downpours across much of Spain and into Italy. The best of the sunshine will be towards the far, far east across parts of Greece. Temperatures here not doing too bad at around 18 or 19 degrees. And we hold on to some heavy showers through the week as well. Temperatures up to 20 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. There will be some showers, bit of rain for some of us today, also some sunshine breaking through, but I think the big talking point will be the drop in temperatures. There is a cold front lying across Scotland through today, and behind it, to the north of this, there is some colder air coming through, so temperatures will be dropping through the next 24 hours. But through today, some showers across parts of Scotland, some of these falling as sleet or snow over the higher ground, something a bit brighter across central parts once that stubborn fog across North Sea coastal areas clears away. Meanwhile, in the south, particularly towards the west, it's quite cloudy with some outbreaks of rain. Still pretty mild towards the south, temperatures low to mid-teens here, but further north, chillier than it has been through some recent days because of that colder air that I mentioned coming through. Now, as we go through into this evening, still some showers across parts of Scotland, and there's still the potential for some sleet or snow over the highest ground. Further west, though, a greater chance of staying largely dry, where you're sheltered from that northerly wind. Across Northern Ireland, mostly dry through this evening, but a bit of cloud here. Also quite a lot of cloud across many parts of England and Wales, and towards the southwest, across parts of South Wales and into southwestern England, the cloud will be thick enough for some outbreaks of rain, and that rain could continue, could even pep up a little bit as we go overnight and through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further north, there will be some clear skies developing, particularly across some parts of southern Scotland, northern England, maybe Northern Ireland, and here we are going to see temperatures dropping lower than they have done through some recent nights, and so a touch of frost, even a few icy patches possible first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, through tomorrow, the cloud, the outbreaks of rain in the southwest quickly clear away, and then for many it's actually looking largely dry, some decent bright weather, though we do have a northerly wind, and on that northerly wind there will be a scattering of showers coming down, and again these could be a bit wintry at times over the highest ground of Scotland. Notice for all, temperatures will be a little bit lower. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
That breaking news, the Home Office has confirmed that that man in his 30s was arrested on the evening of 9th of March for entry without leave. He remains in police custody. He's the man who was a Hamas supporter who crossed the channel on a channel and illegally crossed the channel at the weekend. So good.
We presume it's him.
Yeah, well, that's what they're telling us.
They're being a bit cryptic.
They are. That's him. That's an image of him. He's the one who said death to all Jews when he arrived in Britain, put us something out on social media saying, thank God I'm here. Thank God. I wish he wasn't.
Well done. Let's just have a round of applause for the fact that they found him. We don't get to say that very often. Now, we want to make your spring spectacular. Wasn't yesterday gorgeous in the sunshine? Well,
what happened today?
Looking forward to spring in our latest Great British giveaway. You could win £17,777 in tax-free cash, but that's not all. You'll also win not one but two sought-after designer watches and a lovely designer handbag if you want to look and feel the part for spring. Here's all the details you need.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound?
Oh my God, that's brilliant news.
For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
That's it from Britain's Newsroom. Up next, Good Afternoon Britain, in the capable hands of Miriam and Dawn. We'll see you tomorrow. See you then.
Indeed, yeah, it's Blonde on Blonde this afternoon for you. Miriam and Dawn live from 12 o'clock with a cracking, absolutely packed show for you.
And we'll be talking about bouncers as well. I believe you used to be one, Dawn.
Oh, well, kind of. More coming.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we've got a colder week ahead, especially compared to last week. Sunny spells, scattered showers with the return of some